Shen asks, what's this? I mean, it's in the title. Line spin with Vandy. Hey, what's up, French fries? How's it going? Hey everybody, it's your favorite underwater host, Shark. Oh crap, wrong channel. Hey everybody, it's your old pal, vandweller. I am the owner and lead commentator of Classic Tetris Monthly. And today we've got an episode of Line Spin for you, right? It's the spin on lines, I guess, is what I'm calling it. I don't know, but that's what we have for you today. Really excited to have a guest for you instead of, like rage bait, which has been what we've usually had. Hopefully no rage bait today, because our guest is somebody who's made something great, and I am very excited to talk to him about it today. That's Chris Higgins. Now, if you don't know the name Chris Higgins, and if you've been to CTWC, you probably know the visage of Chris Higgins, because he is someone who has been who's worked with the CTWC on the tech team for a lot of years, doing cameras, running around, grabbing cables, pointing, go over here, get this shot, that kind of thing. So this person, if you've been really to any of them in the last like 10 years, this person will not be completely unfamiliar to you. So I am pretty excited and honored to have with me Chris Higgins. So Chris Higgins, you are on the screen right now, and let us confirm that you can be heard.
Hey, can I be heard?
I think you can be heard. I think you can be heard. All right, great. Chris, I'm really excited to have you today. You know, it's not often we get a new Tetris documentary. So the last one that I remember being
increasingly more common, actually, I would say lately. Just like, oh, it's Wednesday, there's another 2 hours of content. Let's go.
Yeah. I mean, certainly we've had an explosion of YouTube folks, people creating content on YouTube. But as far as, and those are great, and no one's gonna, cast any aspersions on our, YouTube creators. They've been huge in driving the scene. But there's something special about having like a documentary that's not on YouTube, that is in a traditional narrative documentary format, rather, as opposed to, again, these great YouTube videos, but have a very YouTubey feel. And this is like a real documentary series. I'm pretty excited. It's called Best of 5, the Classic Tetris Champions. Now, before we get into talking to you, I just want to let the audience know that this is going to go available. When is it? The 31st? Is that right?
Yeah, so Friday morning.
So Friday morning, this is going to become available. And now there's sort of a phased kind of rollout for this. I think people who are backers on the Kickstarter, a lot of them already have had access to it and have watched it, right? I've watched it. There's that because I'm an esteemed member of the press.
Members of the press, yeah. So I think there's like 12 people who've seen it.
Okay, well, I'm a member of the press, and of course, Tetris Illuminati. So I've gotten to see it. Plus, I had to interview him. So, he wanted me to see it, and I actually finished it. It was more than I thought it was going to be, honestly. So, it was great. So I want to let everybody know where they can watch it. Okay, so what I wanted to say is there is a rollout that's coming out on the 31st, and that is for who, Chris?
For people who have money and want to pay the money to me to have.
Yeah. So, good luck with that. I mean, that's blood from a turnip.
So the deal is, coming out this Friday, there is a website. It's up now, and it's a pre-order situation. Monday morning, I press the button, it goes live.
Yes.
And you get the, access to stream, download. These are like MP4 files. You can just put them on stuff. There's no DRM. There's no nothing. Mm-hmm. There will also be, by the way, there's 5 episodes running approximately 5 hours, like 4 hours and 45 minutes or something. So you having watched this is a significant investment of time that I appreciate,
Yeah.
So that happens Friday, if you can get it for pay. Then we're going to wait about 6 weeks. We're going to go through CTWC and let that all, wash out. Then in July, I believe it's July 8th through 12th. It's a Monday through Friday. Mm-hmm. We're going to premiere them on my YouTube.
Okay.
For free.
Yeah.
Forever.
Free, but there's a catch, right?
A couple of catches. One catch is it's going to be littered with ads.
Yep.
So if you can put up with the ads, cool, great. And you don't get the bonus episode 6 that I'm currently working on. It's not out yet. There
Right.
is an extra episode with there's like an extra match in there. There's extra stuff with all of your favorite interview subjects. There's just all this deleted stuff that I couldn't fit in the main show.
Hmm.
So I'm cramming it into a 6th episode that could be like an hour long. So
Yeah.
that's never going on YouTube. That's only for pay, you know.
Yeah.
But
Um,
I just wanted to say, like, one of the things about this is I really want people to watch the movie.
yeah.
I would like to have money, but what I want you to do is watch the movie. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
like you got to make that decision for yourself, whether
Yeah.
it's, worth $20 basically.
All right. So, folks, this is where you can get it. I'm putting a thing on the screen right now. I mean, this is really high professional, really just high quality professional slide, as you could see. I mean, this is like you would see this like on television. I mean, this is amazing. Best of 5 movie.com, bestof5movie.com. If you go there right now, that site is up. And if you scroll down, so you can watch the trailer, which we're going to do in a moment. And then you can scroll down and you'll see best of 5 release May 31st. Da, da, da. Click here to pre-order. And that is where you click in there. Now, the cost is $25, but because Chris wants this to be, Chris has still got bills to pay, but he wants this to be seen far and wide. He is offering a discount for viewers right now. A discount code CTM that is limited time. That will not be forever. Chris, take that down in like a week. We really want to squeeze everybody, All right. Okay, great. Yeah, so 20% off if you use the code CTM. And by the way, this is no affiliate deal. I'm not getting anything. This is Chris, and I want you to see this documentary. I got nothing out of this except the pleasure now of having done Chris a favor and having, yeah, I get nothing. Just, I do. So all right, why don't I go ahead and just ask you? All right, so we'll kind of pimp this code a few times during the thing, just so people who are joining us late will know what this is and what they can do. Oh, yeah, I guess they couldn't hear you on the slide screen, but that's okay. Don't worry about it. All right, that's fine. The point is, Chris wants people to see this film, and because of that, given a discount to viewers watching right now. Use the discount code bestof5movie. Use the discount code CTM at that website, bestof5movie.com. And then you can have it. You can download it. And I think, I mean, I want to show the trailer, but I'm just so excited for some of the things I want to talk about, including like 4K, which was like mind blowing. So I'll ask you about that later.
Entire Ks, yeah.
Yeah,
talk about how the hell that happened.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to ask you how that happened. It was 2014. What? Okay, but no, I don't want to get ahead of myself. Chris, we're going to watch the trailer, but I want to ask you just right off the bat, what is this movie? What is the story that you're telling in Best of 5?
So, I was a volunteer starting in 2012 at CDWC, and I was friends with Adam Cornelius from college. So we knew each other back in the 90s. And, when Adam and Vince and, Robin started up that tournament, they made a documentary. And that documentary is called Ecstasy of Order. And you can watch it legally on YouTube right now.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a whole film. A lot of people don't know this. There's a whole film about the original 2010 tournament, how it came about,
Wow.
how it turns out, all that stuff. And I was talking to Adam over the years. I did a little work on that show, but I wasn't like filming, I did a little bit of writing work at the end. So time passes and I'm going there 2012, 2013. And I'm like, man, this is blowing up. Like this is getting big. At the time it was big, like now it's like, a 10th or 100th of the size, what it was. But I'm looking at it. I'm like, you know what? In 2014, we're going to be at the 5-year mark. So from the original one to then is 5 years. And I really wanted to make a sequel to Ecstasy of Order. And Adam Cornelius was like, all right, let's make Ecstasy of Order 2. I just don't want to have to do anything. Like you go do the filming.
Yeah.
And I got this, and he's like, I got a guy. You should call this guy Terry Purcell. And I'm like, okay. And I just I called him up. He said, come over, come down to the basement. Brought the camera, brought the light. And then what ended up happening is this is a look at the origins of the tournament. Where did it start? How did it grow in that first 5 years? And the real key thing is for the first 4 years in a row, Jonas Neubauer won every year. which is amazing. But also for the players, it's very frustrating. And so every player was like, look, I got one goal, and the only goal is somebody's got to get Jonas. And he almost went down in 2013. He did a reverse sweep in the finals, and you're like, you know, how is this going to happen? So I'm going to avoid spoilers. I know a lot of you watching know who wins in 2014. I don't think it's a spoiler to say it ain't Jonas.
Right.
So that's the thing. That's what this story is. And then embedded in that is some thinking and talking about what does it mean to be a champion? How do we act? And how do we have a community together? How does that all work when we're all rivals, but we're friends at the same time? How do we make that happen? Because everybody wants to win, but they also don't want their friends to lose. And that's what I wanted to shine a light on.
Great. So good. So that is what it's about. I'm going to go ahead and now OBS is being a real bear right now. And so somehow the thing advanced. So just give me a moment to see if I can pull up the trailer. You might not hear the trailer, but I'm guessing you've seen it. So
I've heard it a couple times. Yeah.
not a big deal. But let me just OBS, of course, it's going to throw me a curveball here. So let me just see if this comes up or not. No, it's coming up with some other
trouble
thing. So
early
just
on
bear with
here.
me for a moment. Yeah, it's bringing up. Hold on, it's bringing up.
No trouble early on here.
Thing. So just let me. That's annoying. Shut down source but not visible. All right, so there we go. That's probably what I needed to do. And now should bring it back up. Okay. Here we go.
This is a story about people who play Tetris on the original Nintendo console. A game so hard, it took 15 years for anyone to get videotape of a million-point game. A game so tough, you lose every time.
You know, I didn't know if I was ever going to have a chance to win.
I was getting my butt kicked every day at Tetris.
I think universally people have that feeling where they're like, I'm done with this game.
This is a story about a tournament designed to find the best Tetris player in the world.
I recently got some nerve damage in my arm, and it was suggested to me that I not play Tetris for a while, but f that.
Getting frustrated, literally tears of frustration, I remember that.
You can't be self-conscious of what you're doing, where you're letting the piece tell you what to do. And if you start trying to exert any real control over the action, beyond just asking that piece, tell me where to put you, it's like you've stepped out of the zone and it's over for you.
A competition to decide once and for all whose skills, whose talents, whose performance under pressure could defeat anyone.
There are situations where nothing is good. Everything is a bad move, but you have to ask yourself, what's the least bad move?
Obviously, I was not done playing Tetris.
If I face Bo, I'll kill him, and I'll feel really bad about it again.
Let's get into our first match here. I'm excited. Let's do some commentary for some classic Tetris matches. Oh no, and then just a bad drop right there.
But this isn't a story just about victory. This is a story about not giving up.
It's gonna be close. Staying alive, but barely. Oh, I don't know if it's gonna. It looks like we have a champion.
All right, now I'm not muted. Sorry about that. Okay, so we are. So that was the trailer, and so I guess it is now time to talk to you about this film. And really, it's not a film. I mean, it's a 5-episode documentary, and I guess it probably didn't start out that way. So, but my kind of what I want to just start off with, kind of a question that probably is on everybody's mind. You say you got started with sort of involved in CTWC in 2012. This footage was shot in 2014. It's now 2024. So what is your Tetris PB, and have you maxed out yet?
Yeah, I'm at like 198. When I was in 2020, I set up the NES and I was doing streaming like this is my little editing room. You know,
Yeah.
I had my CRT and stuff. And I was doing a lot of level 7 starts. And one day I got like almost 200 and I'm just like, I'm out. Like, not gonna top this. It's great. And I actually, it's funny though, when you do that, one of the things starting out, I wasn't a player. I'd like literally never, I maybe had picked it up like once, you know, like at the tournament just to be like, how does this work? And I got frustrated and put it down. But when I was in the actual editing phase, I wanted to go through some of those milestones of like, okay, you start out and you do it this way. And then you start to realize like, I got to be looking at that next box, you know, like that's important.
Yeah.
So figuring out some of those milestones along the way to understand I mean, I'm not, you know, obviously I'm not like a max out player. I'm not in that realm, but understanding that so I can then explain it in a reasonable way. But the larger question there is, so what's up with the 10 years?
Yeah. So I mean, so you're shooting all this stuff in 2014. I get the impression that, or my understanding is a lot of the interviews kind of that you did went into 2015 or so.
Yeah.
So yeah,
and then there were more later, actually. There was a little bit more in 2016 with Terry. And then in 2021, we brought in Chris Tang and James Chen to do new commentary for because part of this is a lot of the runtime of this show is matches. Because so here's the thing. Here's what
what happened?
Here's what happened.
What happened?
Here's what had happened. I thought, you know, okay, Ecstasy of Order fits into this nice, like, kind of feature documentary thing. Like it's you know, between 90 minutes and 2 hours. It's like right in that pocket. Makes sense. There's a beginning, a middle, and an end. Has a climax, and cool stuff happens. And I thought, how hard could it be? I'll just do the same thing over again, but in 2014 instead of 2010. Not realizing, honestly, like the amount of crew and investment and, you know, things. I was just like, I'll just bring my camera to Terry's basement and I'll just start going, you know. And so you know, and I hired a crew for the actual tournament. You know, at one point we had a crew of 5 camera ops running, I believe, 7 to 9 cameras. So sometimes during the matches, you start to see like, oh, there's actually a lot of coverage. Even though if you were watching the stream that year, you saw like 4 games and these little like postage stamps of people's faces from a webcam. And we were so proud of that. We were like, there's faces now, because it used to be just like games, you know, just like the quad box of games. Because like, again, this was early days. This is before they had that, you know, the HD rendering, and even the idea of putting 2 games side by side in the middle of the screen with players on the sides, that hadn't been invented in 2014. That came in 2015 or 16. So anywho, I started before the tournament and I followed a couple of key players, mainly Terry, because Terry that year had gone between 2013 and 2014, he went from having an 853K PB to having a max out, a 19 max out, and the earliest max out. So I think it was like a level 25 or something. I think Buko took that away from him when that famous game where he never got home. I think that's what that was. But Terry, like, basically he went from this sort of, you know, high level player to having a real shot. And so everybody was kind of looking at this guy and being like, this guy is dangerous. And also he's a teacher. So he had the summer off and he spent the whole summer practicing. And so I was just going over and over and over to him, talking to him about, what are you doing? So we shoot the tournament, and the next like summer or spring or something, go down to LA and I interview Jonas there. We interview Harry was down there, interviewed Blink, John Tran, who runs Hard Drop, who's in this just like this much. Again, we interviewed Blink for like 3 hours. That's part of what goes into episode 6, because it just didn't fit, because he's like a modern player. But you know, so we got more material, and I got back up to Portland, and I'm sitting there with you know, with my friend Adam, and I'm just trying to like wrap my head around, what have I done, you know, like, because we did a rough cut at one point. Adam and I just sort of assembled everything. We were like, okay, so we're going to have like an intro to every main character. So we each would like cut together that kind of thing. We just strung all those together with no gameplay whatsoever. And it was like 2 hours and 20 something minutes of just basic content. I was like, but the thing I'd also noticed was people increasingly would come to the tournament or watch online, and they would get mesmerized by the Tetris. They'd lock in, even if they had no knowledge of the game. they would have this, and I had it too. I was like, I want to watch the games because the games are significant to the story, you know?
Yeah.
So I wanted to put games in this thing. And I'm like, well, at this point, it's already busting out the seams and there's no game footage whatsoever. What am I going to do? So I show up at CDWC like 2015 or 16 or somewhere in that, you know, and I get up there on the mic and they're like, oh, so when's the movie coming out? And I'm like, next year. Then the next year comes and they're like, hey, when's that movie coming out? And I'm like, not really sure. Maybe like the next year.
Yeah.
And it turned into this thing where I kind of put it in a drawer between about late 2016 and into about 2020-ish. At one point, I think it was 2019 or thereabouts. I was working the tournament. I'd heard about this hot new YouTube guy, Game Scout.
Yeah.
And I ran up to him and I said, hey, do you want to edit a documentary? And he was like super sweet. He was like super like, you know, oh, let's talk about it. And I started to kind of like outline the shape of this thing. And he kind of was like, that sounds like a pretty, how many hours of footage? And I'm like, 300 and something. And he's like, oh, okay. And I'm like, yeah, anyway. And then time passed and I still couldn't figure out how to do this. Gilbert Tang, who's in the chat right now, good friend of mine, supporter of this the whole time, and who actually, like, I wrote a book years ago and he read the book. That's how I met him. He was like, he wrote me and said, hey, I liked your book. Thanks, Gilbert. He's the only one, you know?
Oh yeah. We're gonna have to drop a link to the book somewhere in the chat because I had no idea. You think I would have done some research and found out you wrote a book, but
The Blogger Abides. That's how I made a living as a blogger for 10 years, which used to be a thing you could do.
Yeah.
Anyhow, so Gilbert, you know, COVID comes around. We're all sitting at home. We're all locked up. And Gilbert makes this observation that is like, you know, it's getting popular to do these like series documentaries. Like, don't do like 90 minutes or 2 hours. Do like a lot, like as much as you can. Because like at that point, HBO, there's all these things, Netflix, you know, there's all these like serialized long, like there was the NBA one with Michael Jordan,
right?
The Last Dance, that was getting really big. And he had this central insight, which was like, hey, you know, I know you can't fit it into this little container of like small movie. So break the container and make it into big movie, make it really, really long and just like embrace it. And that was like the central, that's what broke the dam. And I was like, oh, and I'm locked up. Like I don't have any other work going on. Cause like at the time I was trying to work as a portrait photographer.
Yeah.
In March of 2020, I'm like, I'm going to pivot my business to going out and like photographing families in person.
Yeah. They're not inviting you over during that time.
No, wasn't a good time. So did a Kickstarter, raised a bunch of money. And we had cool stuff. We had, you know, the participation of Harry Hong and Jonas Neubauer and Joseph Saley. Like we had people like those guys were signing cartridges. There were lessons you could buy, like with, you know, various.
Yeah, I remember.
It was a whole, and you contributed very generously. And I think I still owe you something for that. So
yeah, I think 4 hours of Chris Higgins
consulting time. Yeah,
but really, I just wanted to contribute like a good amount that didn't require anything physical on your part, because I know that costs, right? So I was trying to be like a good doobie, although I'm sure you appreciated everybody who got physical stuff from you as well. But yeah. So all right. So the Kickstarter happens, and then that was about what 20,000 came in from the community to help you finish that.
Yeah. This is like December 2020.
Yeah. So how critical was having those extra resources to help you?
Oh, very. I mean, the other thing is like, understand that my mindset in December of 2020 was, here's a movie I can do without having to go get more footage. I didn't have the new commentary, but I was like, I could probably do commentary over Zoom, like worst case.
Right.
You know, so I was kind of like, I set this really low target where I was like, I think for $5,000, I could make something. That was my original target, was $5,000. I was like, I could make something and just put it together, you know, knock it out. I don't know how long I'm going to be in this room right here, but like, you know, I think I can do that. And we ended up quadrupling that amount. Wow. So I kept with being like, okay, we're adding more episodes. There's new extra stuff. It's going to be in 4K. It's a whole other discussion. Anyways, as many of us know, content warning, death. A couple weeks later, Jonas.
Yeah.
So I get a call, and it's like, you know, just to be real, it's like you get a call that you find out somebody you care about has passed away. That has happened many times in my life. And this one, I was like, okay, in December, I'm like, I'm making a sports movie. It's really simple. There's like you just start at the beginning, run through it, bam, bam, boom, boom, boom. Whoever wins, wins. That's over. All of a sudden, my world gets turned upside down because one of the biggest person in the community and the anchor of the show, the reason that it existed, his 4-time winning streak, has died. And I all of a sudden have to reassess, like, how do I tell this? This story is different now. It hits really different. And you have to respect that. You know, you have to be like, you have to at least think really hard about, you know, what is the story now and how is it different with that knowledge? And so I spent a lot of time kind of spinning my wheels and trying to figure out, like, oh man, what am I going to do? Ultimately picked myself up off the floor at some point in there, looped in my friend Carl, who I've known since high school, Carl King. This guy's awesome. And in 2021, went down to his studio and started just kind of working on it. And I was basically like, help me, Obi-Wan, you're my only hope. I don't know anybody else who's in this industry who's willing to do this. And he was like, well, I've got a studio. We could bring the guys here. We could, like, you know, we've got the guidelines for COVID. Like, the crew will mask up and we'll do all this stuff. And there's a control room so we can separate the crew from the, you know, whatever. So I started working at that point with Pumpy Heart to get stats, to get a briefing book together for those guys. And I prepared all this footage. Trey Harrison had actually, in that, one of the things was during the Kickstarter, I had gone back to Trey because he had looked before at the recordings we had of the game footage from 2014, which were terrible. They were like 300 pixels by 200 pixels or something like that. And they were like bad, like really, they were like flash video. And he'd run them through Trevision and it didn't work. Like, it didn't result in like a good game. And he said, it's impossible. So I said, hey, I know you're currently off work, you know, because pandemic had just hit. Would you mind giving it one more shot? Because this is kind of critical. Like, I mean, the games look like crap. And if I can't get good looking games, then what's the point, you know? And he's a total trooper. He got in there and he figured it out. And he made this, he made HD versions of the games. And I only had 10 matches. I'm like, these are the ones out of all the matches. We're only going to follow these kind of parts of the bracket, you know. He made them and he sent them over and he's like, look, man, there's a bunch of like garbage in the games, like random blocks that just appear and disappear. And some stuff is missing. Like, there's no Tetris rate because I couldn't figure out how to get that working because of, you know, reasons. But he got it all done. And I was sitting there like, oh, it is possible at that stage. So, by the way, like all the game footage, I had to go frame by frame on each side and watch for like blocks to change color and then like cut and paste and like I composited. And there's 162 minutes of gameplay, I think, in this show.
There is.
That's part of what the last 4 years has been for me, is like kind of like reconstructing this stuff. But yeah.
So it sounds like there really should be like a making of documentary of the making of this documentary, because, you know, 10 years is a really long time.
Yeah.
And, you know, so you shelve it in, you know, 2016. And was it just, you know, was it that you were just kind of overwhelmed by what you were doing it? Were you unsure of what you were going to, what really, what to do? Was it resources? Like, what went into that decision to sort of shelve it around 2016?
I do just want to acknowledge the gigantic raid that came in from Scooty.
Yeah, I was going to do that. Yeah, and I also I want to be so. All right, you can think about that, and I do want to acknowledge that we are doing this live, so there are live things that I do want to call out here. First of all, Gilbert did subscribe to our channel for 6 months at Tier 1, so I want to thank Gilbert for that. And Blue Scooty did raid our channel with a giant raid, so welcome, Blue Scooty. And there's a couple of comments I just wanted to call out because they were funny. Game Scout says, I remember that conversation, you know, that you alluded to. It was very brief right before the top 8 of 2019 during the brink. So Game Scout verifying that it happened. So we have sources now
No lies detected
No
so far.
lies detected. And then Game Scout says, I was very curious about what happened during the 4 hours that I earned from you for my contribution. And I haven't taken you up on them yet. I will. I don't know if there's a statute of limitations on them, but
No, it's just open-ended. You could call me when I'm 80 and you'll be like, listen, buddy,
all right.
I need you to like
paint a deck or
whatever.
something.
Yeah, come paint my fence. Right? You know?
That's great.
It'll make it work.
Buko is in the chat and he says, finally finished, huh? So
Yeah.
And Gilbert saying it was a good book. So that was it. So
Thanks.
yeah, thank you everybody for that. And okay, so what was the question I asked you? Yes, in 2016. So you made the decision to put it on the shelf. And like, what is it? Is it overwhelm with what the task is? Is it uncertainty about what you really want to do, or what is it?
Yeah. I mean, what it is I thought I'm going to go make a movie. I've wanted to make a documentary for my whole life. It's the thing I wanted to go to school for. I didn't because I wanted to have a job so I could eat,
Yeah.
But I was hanging out with like film students like Adam Cornelius, for instance. And I thought I'm going to do this. I'm just going to haul off and do it. I know basically how to do it. And I just didn't realize until I had captured the initial footage how much the post-production, like I saw it as a problem of bringing a camera to a location and asking good questions and getting cool footage that looked good. And if you've seen the trailer, it's like the footage looks pretty good. And there's like a lot of people in there saying like interesting, provocative things. But what I didn't understand at that time was like, once you collect hundreds of hours of footage of people talking and doing things, you then have to like transcribe it all, write down what everybody said, organize it, figure out what do I have, and then given what I have, what do I do with that? So I was just overwhelmed in 2016 and I just was embarrassed. I was like, I just told everybody like, man, I'm going to go do it. And I had no clue how hard it was to do. And I also at that time was a complete one-man band. All those interviews with Terry, I was the camera operator, the sound operator, I was doing the lights. It was just me and him. And so that's one of the things I used to do. I was a journalist before this. Well, I was a blogger, but I did reports for like This American Life. And I'm like, I've done some stuff. And one of the skills I developed was interviewing. One of the things I ran into with interviewing is if you're alone in a room with somebody and you're, paying attention, you can get some really interesting stuff out of people, really honest, have a really honest conversation. And that's what I was looking for. But I'd gotten all this. And then once I had it on a hard drive, it was so overwhelming to try to understand, like I've made a lot of short films that are like 3 minutes long, or like the longest one was 15 minutes long or whatever. And this is like hours and hours and hours. And I just didn't know how to do some of the core things that I had to then do. Yeah. And I was so ashamed by that. And I was just like, I'm just going to put this away for a while, maybe forever, until I saw things like Game Scout. And I thought, this online, I mean, the scene kept growing and I kept thinking, I got to get back to this, but I don't know how. And then when Gilbert came along and said, what if you made it a series with a bunch of episodes and made it really long? I was like, oh my God. It did not occur to me.
Yeah. Well, as someone myself who, makes, kind of, I don't know, grandiose promises and continually under-delivers, like I can totally appreciate this because I've had stuff that I've been sort of, quote, working on for 15 years myself, and it's like, well, there is a little bit of shame there, but, I think the lesson is if you have something like that, there's nothing wrong and everything right with trying to get help, right? Because once there became, this community of people who were doing something adjacent to what you were trying to do, all of a sudden things start to take shape, right? There's people, making, making documentary content, maybe in a slightly different way than you had. And then there's people who are very interested in the scene and I guess it, there starts to be kind of a market for it. Cause if you think of like Ecstasy of Order, they're just shooting a documentary out into an uninterested world about this topic. And they have to sell, brand new people cold that this is an interesting story. And, okay, it was, reasonably successful for their aspirations, but really in a sense, you're doing the very same thing because, okay, yeah, there was one documentary and maybe you're, there was a little bit more of a market because there were things like King of Kong and, a few other gaming oriented documentaries around that. But in essence, in 2014, 2015, or 2016, whenever this would have happened, you were still shooting this thing out into a world that probably, you know, they have to be sold on why this is interesting.
Yeah. And, you know, and it was also a really different landscape in a lot of ways. Technologically, I mean, to be really blunt, like taking footage that's 10 years old and putting it out now is kind of interesting.
Yeah. And I wanted to ask about that because when
Right?
I watched it, and I've watched all 5 episodes, if everybody wants to know, I've watched all 5 episodes, and what I, you know, sort of picked up during the whole thing is the 5 episodes that we have, and there's a 6th one that, well, we don't want to overcommit and say there will be one, because it might take you 10 years. But
Yeah, exactly. It will come.
It'll eventually be
a
here.
couple of months. It's gotta finish it up. Yeah.
But it takes, you know, mostly kind of an agnostic, almost agnostic approach to the future, in a sense that it's almost like we're watching it as though it's 2015, and until we get to episode 5, in which you kind of cover that. So do you think that at least for the first 4.5 episodes, that it's better to put yourself in the mindset of somebody who's living in 2015, or is that what you would, or I don't know, what approach should we take when watching this?
It's actually it's a really nuanced problem, and I'll try to make it like straightforward. Because for instance, when we did the re-commentary, Chris Tang was there the first time, so he knew everything had happened. But of course, it was like 2014 to 2021, so he didn't remember the details. You know, like it was just, and he was also calling 2 matches at once, because at that time everything was 4 players up until like I think the top 4.
Yeah. And
so,
over a loudspeaker, not like
over
studio
a loudspeaker
commentary.
Yeah, and there was like, you know, the DJ was always talking and interrupting him and stuff, so it was all kind
humorously
of
to great humorous effect.
Right. Yeah, there's some
certainly.
times that it gets interesting. So but he had done that, and I had to figure out for the new commentary, because we're doing the commentary in a post Jonas world.
Yeah.
He's gone. And I had to think it through, like, okay, logically, these 2 guys, you know, Chris Tang and James Chen, like they know things, but I was like, look, you have to please imagine, like, I know it's not true. We filmed this little intro bit where they say, okay, it's like past the year 2020, and we're going to walk backwards and inhabit as if we're watching this in 2014. And often in matches, they say things like, are we going to see a max out in comp?
Yeah.
Are we going to see double kill screen in comp? And it's really funny because you can kind of hear Chris Tang kind of being like, it's possible that who knows what did and didn't happen. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's really funny, but we're all trying to live in this world, because honestly, there's a consistent world in like the 2014-15 era of looking at this early days of Tetris. And then when I was trying to write like the narration and the structure of the show, I needed to also acknowledge that like there is a future. So when I'm explaining the game and I'm saying like level 29 is the kill screen and it's gonna kill your game in a matter of seconds. The thing I was like, that is true in 2014 for DAS players. It is obviously not true. So I put in a throwaway line. It's like, in the future, players would learn how to handle high-speed play in a much better way. You know, so like there were a lot of those issues about like figuring out how to deal with time. And mostly I was trying to say like, look, this is back in those days. And for what it's worth, one of the things we saw, and I saw this like personally as a volunteer, is we would see people just randomly walk up and watch the projector, and they would just like lock in. And this happens on YouTube too. People come across it, it gets recommended to them, and they're like, feed me more classic Tetris. And so make a series, I guess, in this case, where you could show it to somebody who had no knowledge, no interest, they don't know what Tetris is. Maybe if you are a Tetris nerd, but you have somebody in your family, you know, or like a friend where they're like, what even is this? Why would I care? You know, I tried to design it so that you could like watch it with them, and it's going to like walk them through and try to deliver the key information at the moment you have the question. Where like, you know, I was watching it with my brother at one point, episode 1. And at one point he said, what do they mean when they say burning? And I'm like, shut up. Because at that moment, Chris Tang says, so when we do a single clear or a double clear or a triple, but not a Tetris, that's using up lines that would be better. As Tetris says, that's what we call burning.
Mm-hmm.
And I was so proud at that moment because I was like, yes, I knew you would have that question. And because I was here, you asked me it. But I was just like, just listen to the man. He's going to explain. So all that stuff, like, same piece sets, which we didn't have back then, that gets explained, and like, we tried to kind of like construct it in this way that you progressively learn more and more, and you care about who's playing, you care, you've met all these people. And so when they're going head to head, you want them to win, and you often find yourself wanting both people to win because they're both nice people and they both have a good, story and all this stuff.
Yeah.
So I tried to make a movie that had an emotional core to it that mattered from a human angle, and it also explained what even is this hobby.
Yeah.
And yeah, it doesn't include any of the stuff about rolling, or even like, one of the questions I asked every interviewee was, do you hyper tap? Have you ever hyper tapped?
Right.
And everybody said, tried it, can't
Yeah.
do it. I can do a quick tap, which, although it wasn't even called quick tap in those days, they called it the extra tap.
Yeah.
They were like, I can do the extra tap.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, that wasn't a thing. Like,
Yeah.
that wasn't
No,
the
I mean, at that time, really, who was tapping? I mean, Thor, who was not playing, he was somebody who was doing it. And then it would be a couple of years before Corian came in.
Well, I mean, was Yanni doing some kind of tapping?
Well, yeah, I think there was, I think so. And I think I even see some footage in there. I think of like when the players would be, topping out on 19, they would make some panic tap attempts. Like they knew that there was a technique, and particularly I saw Trey do it, and probably exposed to that through his friendship with Thor. And so we'd be topping out on 19. You could even see Trey a couple times trying to tap pieces at the end, but certainly not as like I'm starting on level 18 and I'm tapping the way through. That was not a thing then. Hey, while we have a bit of a gap, because I do have a question on what you said, but I want to make sure, we've been going for about 42 minutes. I do want to, people who've joined us since, we're talking to Chris Higgins, who is the writer and director of Best of Five, the classic Tetris Champions. It's a new documentary, 5-part series, and it's releasing on the 31st of May, so just a couple of days from now. And you can buy this documentary. So, Chris, for the people who've just joined us, go ahead and just tell us how they can get their hands on this documentary. What are the different ways they can watch it, and what they have to do to get it?
Yeah, I was in a chat last night in somebody's stream, and I messed this up, so I'm going to try and get it right. Here's the deal. The retail price is $25, which I know is pretty steep. There's a discount code. We just made one right before this.
Yep, CTM.
It'll knock $5 off. If you're in a local currency, it's not the US, it'll be 20% off.
Mm-hmm.
You go to bestof5movie.com. You can pre-order it now, or you can go on Friday, do it then. And what you get for that is you get permanent streaming, you get downloads that are just MP4 files. They're 4K, they're great, and there's no DRM. It's just you.
And it's not only 4K. There's also if you want just 1080p, if that's all you can handle,
right,
or you can even go, if you're going to watch in your CRT somehow, you can get it as, I think I saw like 240 by 2. I don't know. I saw some really low quality options.
Yeah, or you can stream it. I mean, if you whatever you want to do, and you can like Chromecast it to your thing, or there's like ways to do that. So that's that. That is the release in 2 days this Friday. And I'm trying to recoup some of the money I've spent over this, on this over the course of literally 10 years, because everybody who worked on this show got paid. And I want to say that again. Everybody who worked on this, did anything, the people who made the stickers, the people who like were production assistants, the camera operators, the narrator, like everybody, like, the commentators, they didn't just do it because they're nice. They got paid.
You're making me look bad, Chris.
Well, I know it's tough. And the problem with that is I don't have Netflix or whatever behind me, and I'm not gonna. Like, this is I own this, and I want to sell it to people in exchange for money.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Imagine.
However, I also understand there's a lot of people watching for whom $20, it ain't going to work. You know what I mean? It's just like, it's too much. You're, whatever your circumstance is, I totally get it. So in July, on July 8th, we're going to do a series of premieres starting on July 8th. It's a Monday going through July 12th, which is a Friday. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. We're going to premiere them for free permanently on my YouTube channel. YouTube channel is Chris Higgins Films. It's where the trailer is right now. And the idea is I'm going to try to slam them full of ads to try to recoup some of that, try to get a 25 cents or whatever out of anybody who watches 5 full hours of this or whatever. But the idea is, look, I want you to watch the movie. I want you to have this thing at your disposal, because there's a certain point as a filmmaker where, you're talking to somebody just in your life, and they say, "Oh, how can I watch your movie?" And if the answer is, "Well, you've got to go on Fubo," or you know what I mean, like Tubi,
indierise.co.uk.
right, or go
you
to
know.
this web page and then pay a bunch of money. Like,
Yeah.
there's a lot of people who are just like, they just shut down, because I'm the same boat. I'm like, if I can't get at it, like, it's not going to happen. So I recognize that that's normal. And there's two things here. You can pay for it, which supports me and the work and the other people who I already paid, frankly. And you get a 6th bonus episode, which is coming out later this year. And so that is, you basically get extra stuff. Or can't swing that, that's fine. Watch it on YouTube, enjoy it, share it, live it up. And so, by the way, currently my YouTube channel is not monetized. I need to get to 1,000 subscribers.
Oh,
So,
shoot.
like, that would be pretty cool to get to that before July 8th. So I'm going to be doing a little work to try to get there.
Yeah.
To, put out some like bonus features and stuff just to get there.
Good. I saw Ro in the chat. Ro, if you want to put a link to Chris's YouTube channel, that would be great. So, okay. So they can either, and Chris, I understand you can't be heard on this when I show this slide. So I'm going to go ahead and just show this slide. So the URL and the code is up there. But go to best of 5. Oh, wait, maybe you can be heard. I don't know. No, you can't. Bestof5movie.com. Best of 5. And I had to capitalize each letter because otherwise, if I lowercased it, it looked like best off ivermectin or something, which is probably true. But you should be off of it. Don't go on it. But yeah, bestof5movie.com. 20% off with the code CTM, and that code will be good for about a week. So, and there'll be you go to that page, you scroll down a little bit, there'll be a thing that says pre-order, and you can pre-order, and that takes you right through. So just pop your code in there. And now, Chris, you can be heard again.
Yay.
Good. So yes, you can either do it that way. I think that's a great way if you want to support Chris and what he's done. Again, he's done a great job of just, paying everybody involved. And, we definitely aspire to, people should not, if at all possible, work for free. But unfortunately,
right. And
there's an economics to this.
The nature of all these tournaments, honestly, is there's a lot of volunteer labor.
Yeah.
Like there's many years that I worked at CDWC where I was a volunteer, and that only, that's only changed a little bit in kind of the recent modern era. So like, I was a pure volunteer in this for many years, and that's okay. That's normal, but yeah, I had a point, but it went away. I just think that I think that there's a thing about, I tried really hard to make a movie that you could watch literally with your mom.
Mm-hmm.
I watched it with my mom, and I my marketing friend watched it with her mom, and both moms got really excited when the gameplay started, which was not I wouldn't have totally predicted that, but they were like, I got this call this one night because my friend had watched it with her mom, and she was like, "My mom wants me to tell you," and we've met, I've known her forever,
Yeah.
but she's just like, she's really effing into it, and she wants this particular player to win. And I'm like, well, keep watching, keep going, because it's just going to get weirder and weirder. And there's some matches in this thing that are like urban legends. I mean, frankly, this movie, this project itself is basically an urban legend in the Tetris community. So I've seen people in disbelief on Discord being like, surely you're joking. This is not coming out Friday. Like, how many episodes are coming out Friday? I'm like, all 5 episodes. Like,
yeah.
I tried to say nothing until I was done, because I was so sick of saying, oh, it'll be done soon. And then I just mess it up and not be done. So I was like, look, for the last year, it's been I'm just chipping away, and I finally got it. So it's releasing a week before CDWC. And by the way, that's the 10-year gap, 2014, 2024. This is a way to time warp back and look at these 2 tournaments. What does it look like now? How has it, man, boy, has it grown. Everything about it has grown. The gameplay, all of the sort of AV aspects, the number of people, the quality of play. But there's one thing that actually is consistent throughout this. You can see it in 2014, which is the way people treat one another. That's already there. That is in the DNA of this thing. And you can see people, and I want you, if you all watch this, I want you to watch, there's an episode called The Buzzer Beater. And I want to say who it's I don't want to say who it's between. There's two of our,
don't look it up also if you don't want any spoilers, you know.
Yeah, it's two of our top players, and it comes down to the wire. And I believe a buzzer beater is a basketball term where you throw the shot, you beat it just before the buzzer goes off, and that is what happens. And it is, at the time when we were doing the commentary, I was watching James and Chris, and they were watching this thing, and they were in disbelief. They were like, this can't happen. Like, mathematically, it's over. Like, this is over. And they're saying it out loud. They're like, I don't think this is doable. Like, I think we're about to lose important player X. Like, it is over. And so watching that, and then, Chris Stang at one point is interviewing that player and saying, hey, if there's ever like a top moments of Tetris history, that's one of them. And nobody's ever seen that unless you were there in 24 watching the stream in 2014, which who was, So I'm really glad to like shine a light on some of those things. Cause like, DAS play can be really riveting and exciting, even though it's 10 years ago and like the standards are different,
Yeah. I mean, today we have players doing things that are like unheard of, undreamed of back in 2014. So it might be strange, if you're watching this documentary and you see people getting 300K into the 19 transition, and you might be, is this thrilling? But it is thrilling. Like you get, he's like, oh my God, is he going to chase him? Is he going to chase this 100K down? But that's what it was back then. And it was DAS, and it was totally thrilling. So, I think a lot of folks are going to come into this like, well, I came in, whoops, I don't know what that noise was, but I came into this in the last year or so. Am I really going to be riveted by this? But I don't know. I thought it was pretty thrilling. I was on the edge of my seat to see like what actually happened, even though I kind of already sort of knew what happened. At least in terms of like the result on the statistics line, like I know like who won, but there's a lot of stuff in here that is new to me for sure. I think it sheds lights on things that like, I had no idea that happened. I mean, maybe I can give a couple of spoilers of things. Here's things you might see that were really shocking to me. Like Trey and his training program that he made. I'm not going to tell you anything more about it, but that is super cool. It's almost like a proto Tetris gym, like back in 2014. That was super cool. Harry apartment reveal, for years watching him on Twitch. Now you don't see his whole apartment, but you see at least some, because he streams without camera. And so finally here, it looks like he's in his apartment.
Okay. So fun fact, we don't reveal this in the movie. You'll hear it here first. Vince's apartment. So I was looking around, we had shot, a couple other interviews.
Yeah.
And we were looking for a location, and Vince was like, hey man, come over. We'll get some pizza, get some beers. It'll be great. And we did. And, it was really funny because there was a whole discussion about how there was a painting on the rear wall. And I didn't, again, like, I mean, it wasn't totally dumb, but I didn't know, for example, that like, if you showed the painting in the frame, you could get sued, right? Because if it's like a, copyrighted thing, and you're just like, it's in your shot, that's when you have to blur things out, right? So we had to like frame around it, and kind of move things around and do this funky stuff. But like that, yeah, that interview with Harry was real interesting. So that went on for a very long time.
So that was in Vince's apartment?
Yeah.
Oh, I was hoping we would see Harry's apartment because Harry.
I have had people interact with Harry who are also unaware of the location of Harry's apartment. He'll just come and meet you like outside, which I mean is great. But I mean, so there's people, privacy is important. And like to some people, I think there's like that mystery of the no cam Harry on his streams that actually works great. Cause he's like this, he's doing what he's doing. And for him, man, that works. You know, I've never seen another no cam streamer who has that strong of a personality that comes across,
Yeah, for sure. All right. So no Harry apartment reveal. That was one of the mysteries that I wanted to clear up. Trey with maybe the worst qualifying strategy ever. I'm just going to leave it at that. And the origin of the term pole vault is something that would be kind of revealed. And, some people know that, some people might not know who even came up with that term. So there's a lot. And then the other thing that kind of came up in watching some of the gameplay is some of the adjustments that these players were making, even with DAS. And I think a lot of our like new school players would be like, oh yeah, that's something we came up with. They didn't know about that, but they were doing like these adjustments back then that were like, oh my God, like that looked like totally new school. And yet they were doing it back in 2014. So these, maybe they weren't maxing out every game, but they were they were thinking about the game, and they had, you know, they had thoughts and aspirations of what to do with these pieces, even if the execution wasn't always something they were able to do.
Well, there's even one shot during qualifying where Terry.
Buko says we kind of knew what we were doing.
Yeah, they kind of did. That's the thing. The thing is, we're 5 years in, so they had 5 years of people actually trying really hard, and they had developed a lot of techniques. And there was, like, you know, forums and stuff. Twitch, I think, existed in some format, and I think Kataru was streaming, and I think like Harry was streaming really early as well. So there was some of that happening, but it wasn't like today. It wasn't like you go on and there's, you know, 15 people or 100 people streaming Tetris. You know, it wasn't that kind of deal. But for example, there's a shot where it's not remarked on in the movie. It's just like a B-roll shot where somebody's talking, but you can see Terry do the Corian thing.
Yeah,
he puts an L and a J in a thing, and I was just watching that and I was like, oh right, because Corian didn't show up until, like, I don't know if it was 2015 or 16, but I remember sitting behind Corian and having the sense that, like, everybody was so scared because they were, like, basically Thor, who was the tapping had arrived, had entered the building, and we're all going to get, like, destroyed. And so I was, like, you know, refereeing those Corian games the first year, and I was, like, sitting there being like, this is going to be the end of, you know, like, this is going to be the new thing. The meta's about to change. And it was so interesting that it took a couple more years for that to actually sink in and work. But some of those adjustments, were happening. Yeah. Anyway, and it's fun to kind of, like, when you see a TV and you see somebody doing gameplay, just, like, pay attention to what they're doing, because sometimes they're doing very clever things, and other times I'm noticing things where now I'm like, boy, there's a lot of unnecessary triples.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. But they were playing more conservatively because they could. I mean, their opponents weren't gonna, like, all of a sudden just bust out a max out at any given time. So, you know, you do see there is a lot of conservative play, and, you know, they are DAS players. 19 is hard. It was 2014. And so you can sort of, you know, it's the right strategic adjustment. You know, it's almost like in poker, a tournament versus a cash game, if anybody, you know, is, you know, poker. So yeah. And then I remember seeing in the footage, somebody had an opportunity to do a Buko spin, but, you know, probably only Buko knew about it at that time, and it was not Buko.
Right.
So, so it's funny. And you see, like, oh, I totally know what adjustments they'd be doing now. You know, with their tapping, rolling, even some of the DAS players now who are getting 1.3s, I can see what they're doing now. So super interesting to watch that gameplay in, like, glorious HD, you know?
Right. It really does look pretty good. And also, like, again, I got kind of lucky because we put GoPros in front of the camera, in front of the players, and just captured this. I mean, these were GoPros from 2014, so they were not good. They were, like, HD, and we had not yet developed that idea of there's 2 games in the middle and there's 2 big player cams on the side. So I didn't have camera operators pointed at the players. All I had was this GoPro thing. And so to be able to get footage of the players playing, I had to take this GoPro footage and use this AI upscaling thing to bring it up to 8K.
Right.
Which took months. I'm not kidding. Like, I had 4 computers. It was in the winter because it was good because it was warming the house, you know. But they were all in the basement. They were just, like, cooking, just, like, 24/7, just cooking this footage, bringing it up to 4K or to 8K in some cases, so we could then snip out the little person.
Right.
And it's weird because, like, I mean, it doesn't look great because it is GoPro footage. Like, it just is what it is. But it kind of looks okay, which is kind of weird, again, because we weren't planning on that. We didn't know how we would even present game footage, because it hadn't been invented until years after we did the shoot. So, like, part of the march of progress in this thing was, like, having raw material and having a lot of it, and knowing that, like, we tried to shoot it really good and clean to start with. And so later, when things like AI upscaling come around, we could run things through that and turn it into 4K. And it doesn't quite look like real 4K, but it definitely looks better than the original 1080. And sometimes if you look at there's a trailer we cut in 2015, which is also on my channel. If you go look at that, that's HD. That's before we had upscaled it. And some of this, there's a couple of similar shots, and you can look at them and be like, this looks kind of like, I mean, it looks okay, but it's not the same thing. So anyway, that was wild.
If you purchase it, which I recommend you do, it looks beautiful in 4K. I mean, compared to, and this is not a knock on XCF Order, but I mean, just the technology that exists now, it's, you know, how many years, it's 15 years later after a lot of that footage was shot for XCF Order.
Yeah.
And this,
camera tech was going up, and so like
Mhm.
even 5 years, the cameras we were shooting on, they were basically using really high-end camcorders for a
Yeah.
lot of what Ecstasy of Order was. And we were using like these early full frame, not even mirrorless, but DSLRs with like custom firmwares and stuff.
Mhm.
It was really weird. That's a whole other discussion. But
Yeah. So it looks beautiful. So if you're able to, you have all these options when you buy it to download it. You can get the 4K if it's like an MP4, like an H.265 format. So it's actually pretty compact format for a 4K. So it's like it was what was it like? It was like 8 gigs or something for episodes. Is that what it was? It was, but it was.
I didn't even look at that because like the when you like go into your editor and you spit out the like the main file,
Mhm.
they are between 200 and 400 gigs
Right.
in ProRes format, and then I smushed that down to like a really hi-fi H.265 to upload, and then from there it gets smushed even further and further when you
Yeah.
get down into like the smaller sizes.
But it
like,
still looks great. I
enormous.
watched it on my,
Thanks.
I'm like Mr. 4K UHD. Like I'm totally like physical media guy. That actually,
Yeah.
I was going to ask that later, but I'll ask it now since I just mentioned it. Will we get a physical release?
Actually, yeah. I've already sold a bunch of them on the Kickstarter. So there is going to be a Blu-ray set somewhere over here. I don't want to pull that out of that stack because everything's going to fall down. I have a prototype over here. It takes a couple things going on. The Blu-ray is just 1080p. It's not a 4K Blu-ray.
Mhm.
Because to author a 4K Blu-ray, you need to pay a lot of money.
Right. Yeah.
A lot of money. But if you want to author like a regular Blu-ray, it's doable. So I've got that going, and that is coming in probably about 3 months. That's my thinking, because we're ready to do it. One of the things going on right now is we're translating the captions, the subtitles.
Mhm.
Finnish, JJ is working on that,
Oh,
and
yeah.
it's almost done. I mean, he's
So wait,
maybe
JJ
like,
is the difference between now and us getting the Blu-ray? Oh my God. What are we gonna
well,
do?
I think JJ was looking at it and he was like, you know what? If I motor through this, I bet I can get Finnish onto the Blu-ray, because he's a Blu-ray. He wants that on his Blu-ray because he wants to watch it in Finnish and have Yanni come over, and enjoy it. And then we also have German is underway as well.
Oh, cool.
So that is starting. And I mean, again, whether it's done in time for me to like send the discs off to the people that are going to duplicate them and stuff,
Yeah.
I'm not sure yet. But that's, and though, by the way, those subtitles, when they're available, will also just go into all the platforms. So YouTube, as well as the streaming thing that we're doing as well. So as we get more, we're going to put them up.
Got it. One thing I sort of wanted to get back to in terms of the content, it was, it's 10 years since the game footage was shot, maybe 8 or 9 years since some of the follow-up interviews were shot. And, some of the interviews, I mean, this isn't just like, I don't know. I think some of the interviews touched on a lot of really personal stuff from some of the players, and this is footage that is 8 or 9 years old for these interviews. And how do you approach, I don't know, like honoring what was said during that time versus where that person may be at now? Is that do you know what I'm trying to say?
I do. Yeah. There's a couple times in this show where people drop like lines, right? And it's one of the things when you're a filmmaker or if you're interviewing anybody, if somebody says a big claim, they make a big claim, like I am the best at whatever, or or comments on somebody else and says, whatever they wanted, that person says, shut the F up. When they say things like that, you kind of feel like, oh, I want to use that because that's a really good line. It's like there's a lot of energy and there's conflict, and there's not a lot of like, there's like game conflict, but the more you have, controversy or whatever, that's okay. But I did have to think about that a lot. There's a thing, I don't want to get into the details because you'll see it, but there's a point where Jonas gets booed because he makes a pretty bad joke.
Yeah.
And there you can see somebody flipping him the bird if you look closely, because that's what was. But the thing is, you got to understand, 4 years in a row they were like, please lose, please. And the thing is, you have to put yourself in the shoes of Jonas. So like you have to inhabit both places. So there's everybody else who's flying 2,000 miles to go to Portland to get beat by Jonas. And then there's Jonas, where everybody's got their knives out for him. And so those are equally important perspectives. And then to see how those people express that, like they're not expressing it like, I hate Jonas and he's bad and I want him to lose so I can, what they're saying is, this guy's fantastic and I want to beat him because I think I'm better.
Yeah.
I think I figured I cracked it, and that's to have that, and then to see how Jonas responds to how it all works out is really, I think, really telling. Like how he deals with not being the champion. Like, what does it mean to be the champion and then to not be the champion, and to try to have that sporting attitude and lift people up in defeat? That's really important for any sporting event. And here you see a really key example of it. And I wanted to mention one other thing, which was, we talked earlier about the whole thing of like, when Jonas passed away, I had to really rethink some stuff. And one of the things that I came across was I have hours and hours of Jonas talking about his childhood, the first time he played Tetris, forum posts from way back in the day, like about, arguments about who had the first max out, all this stuff. And a lot of it didn't fit into the main narrative of the show, but I have it. And the problem is now I don't want to put that in a drawer and never have that get seen by people. I feel like there's a responsibility to say, look, this material exists and it's not just going to be locked away in a vault. So I don't know, like, I don't want it to disappear. And so that's a big part of what that episode 6, the bonus feature, if you buy it, a lot of that is spending time just hanging around with Jonas and talking to him about, what really was up with that first max out? Like, and also this letter, there's like, he wrote this forum post where he quits Tetris.
Yep.
He's like, I maxed, I'm out. And I printed it out and I handed it to him and I said, would you mind reading this? And he's like, oh no. I mean, he's like, oh, this is 18-year-old Jonas, like, and he reads it and he's like talking about like, I'm the best skater and the best surfer and I'm the best at Tetris and all this stuff.
Yeah.
And it's so, that kind of stuff, again, that didn't fit. Like, I don't have like a world record progression part of this film.
Right.
It's really more about the tournament and like the actual competitive part of it. But I still want people to be able to see that stuff, kind of like the history channel in Discord.
Yeah,
like that is important. So again, that's kind of why I'm making that extra episode, because I don't want to leave anything. And I mean, there's like stuff there's silly stuff that I'm just gonna, like I'm not gonna literally take the whole unedited tape, but we're just gonna take anything that's meaningful, and put it in there.
Maybe special features on the Blu-ray. There you go. So you get little.
Maybe.
Hey, I love special features. But so all right. So if you do want to see that stuff, I mean, it is extra effort for Chris to have to put all that stuff together. So it's going to be on 6. The way, if you want to kind of see all this other stuff that couldn't fit in the main narrative, is to get the download. Get $20. Like, get it. This isn't Home Shopping Network for ChrisHiggins.com, but, or whatever your website is.
That is actually.
Oh, okay. Chris, this is not Home Shopping Network for that, but I think it's important to support, people who are making stuff that you care about, so, so if that's something you do care about, you want to see that footage, go ahead, pay the man his money and get the, go get the downloadable part. You'll have access for the rest of your life. I tried to put mine on Jellyfin, which is where I put I rip all my stuff and try to put on Jellyfin. I couldn't get it on there. So you're gonna have to, maybe that's part of Chris Higgins helps you. Maybe you can help me put it on Jellyfin.
No, because that's the intent. That's the total intent. Like, I have a Plex thing in my basement where everything that I've got, I just put there.
Yeah.
And I want people to use it. Like, I'm not, do it. Like, please don't put it on Pirate Bay or whatever. But
don't do
just,
that.
Buy it and use it and watch it and enjoy it.
Yeah.
Show it to your family. Show it to your friends.
Great.
That's the point. So, I'm really grateful that, for one thing, there is a community, and the community has persisted, and that you have this strong, vibrant community. CTM is like this massive thing. I watch it. My wife and I watch CTM very often, and I think that the CTM, CDWC, other events as well are. I'm trying to show people these guys had to walk for y'all to run. And it's important to know where you came from, like, where did this all start and how did it kind of grow over that first 5 years? That's what I'm trying to show. And I think I don't want to be stuck up about it, but I think I did an okay job. I think it's worth your all's time and hopefully some money too.
Yeah. I was shocked how much I was actually shocked by how much game footage is in it. Like I didn't realize that there are 9 full matches in this thing. I mean, there's a lot of game footage. So if you're just kind of a fan of seeing these games in a way that they've never been shown before, they were always shown in like the 4-way scene, right? 1 versus 1, 1 versus 1, all in one, with commentary going like back and forth, not really able to cover everything, missing some stuff. And now they've been put into this like remastered into this format. That was really great. And I enjoyed that. And I enjoyed the, probably what you had to go through. I appreciated what you had to go through to make those things happen. And I could tell there was one of them where I think he's filming from the side and I think he reversed something, and I think he's really
there's some flipping and stuff that's going on. There's one where it's so what it was. I think when we're talking about, we had one 4K camera, and so we put it over like in the corner of the 4-person stage, and it kind of, the frame just barely encompasses all the 4 players. And so that's the cam that I use. I upscaled that to 8K, and I'm chopping out this like distorted fuzzy corner to get the players in this one really critical round 1 match. It looks weird, but again, like, you can see them, like,
it seems,
we got the main thing,
it seemed supernatural. Like, I mean, not supernatural, but it seemed very natural. So
it wasn't too weird.
And the other, I know we've kept you past time, so I hope that's okay.
That's great.
I just had a couple other things here. One, some of the impactful people who helped you get this over the line, who weren't even around back then. So I noticed in the credits, Pumpy Heart as a researcher, Game Scout provided some stuff. Sharky, what is it? Sharky was in there as a stunt Tetris player.
Tetris stunt performer.
What is it? I made that Tetris stunt performer.
So there were a bunch of times when I had to show something, like what's a pole vault, So I'm like, okay, set me up a pole vault really high up on 18, and then in using DAS, pole vault and eyepiece over to the left, and just because I need that to then illustrate a point that's being discussed, or be like, I need you to get to level 30 using DAS, and I'm like,
just get to level 30 using DAS. That's it.
Can you just like do that? And then can you do it like kind of ASAP? And Sharky was like, and then like later that day, he's like, I did it, and I'm like. He's like, yeah, and it was a 1.1 or something. And I'm like, what? Like, it was some really intense thing. And so there's all these, like, there's a portion of the first episode where we kind of explain Tetris, like, how does it work? And what is like a, what are the pieces and all that stuff. All that footage, that's all Sharky. Because I was trying to bring in people, and sometimes they're mentioned too, like in the later interviews, like the interview with Chris Tang, he mentions like Kingsman, he mentions like people that are in the scene. And it's interesting because like there's even like in the background of certain shots, you can see like you can see half of Chris Bidwell at one point at the like commentary table. You can see D-Lo in some shots. I saw
the 2019 footage, right? That Kingsman, like front dead center, right there in the middle, just there. Kingsman,
and that's kind of part of his origin story too. It's like that moment of him being right behind the commentary. I think that's when he's kind of being like, I think I can do this, and I don't like comment on it at that point,
right?
But yeah, it's that.
Well, it's hard to miss him, Chris.
I even got releases from Dan QZ and Mark because they were playing in a later match that I show for like 10 seconds. And I was Discording these guys and being like, do you mind like signing a release so I can show, I don't have to blur out your faces? And they were like, I'm confused, but sure. And I'm like, thank you. Cause I really want some of the new era players to be represented in some way. So yeah, like the team, I tried to bring in people who are, working in the modern thing. And like, cause Pumpy was providing all these stats and I'm like, I want you to do that, but do it from the point of view of like, it only goes from 2010 to 2014. So have these players played before? What is the competitive record, et cetera, et cetera. What are all the previous placements and stuff like that. So that's what he came in and did all that. It was great. And it was super helpful to have that kind of support.
Yeah. So I feel like I'm bouncing around from thing to thing here, but boy, I really enjoyed it. It was a great watch. And I think one of the most precious things about this, obviously, aside from all the work that went into it, once you picked it back up again, it's just the footage of these players that really only you and a handful of people have ever really seen of these great players in such high quality footage. And it really helps us see the players in a slightly new way, or just bring additional richness to these players that we might only have this sort of peripheral or just kind of vague sense of, but really fleshes them out as people, particularly I think Terry Purcell, who to me is just this kind of cool looking bald guy that shows up every year. But we really get into Terry Purcell like pretty deeply. So
yeah, we get a real emotional bond with him, and Terry has become a friend. And like, you know, it's anyway, that's again kind of the story of competitive Tetris finding its way into my life, you know, where sometimes when you go and you do an interview with somebody, that's the end of it. You know, you don't end up hearing more about it. But it's funny, there's even a thing that Jonas says at one point, which is because I handed him an iPad that was like a match, and I'm like, I want you to look at, that was 2 matches actually. I made him watch 2 matches from the thing and kind of commentate it. And I also did that with another player, and we don't really see much of that. But,
I saw one player putting it down during some of the.
Right, and you're kind of like, why is that guy holding an iPad? What is that?
Yeah, I thought he was reading his lines, but then when I saw Jonas do his thing, all right, I get it now.
Yeah, so again, we'll try to explain that a little more in maybe the bonus stuff. But like, anyway, in 2018, he's talking to Ardo Cal in that kind of career retrospective interview, and he told, I mean, straight up, he was like, look, I was thinking about quitting. I was kind of done. And he kind of told me that too. And it was partially Heather who said you should go back to it. And then the other part of it was he hadn't watched the game tape. And so the fact that I was like, please watch the game, he said, yeah. I mean, he was like, because he's Jonas, of course he's going to say yes to whatever dumb thing you asked him to do. He did it. He looked at it and he saw some stuff he was doing wrong. And he was like, looking at what I was doing wrong was what made me want to come back.
Yeah.
And to me, the fact that this movie took 10 years, like I wouldn't have known that mere fact of trying to like get some footage for the show actually influenced his competitive career. I'm not the reason, but I'm a contributing factor, and I'm so proud of that. And it's, you know, it's amazing to be able to have that in this documentary, to explain the making this documentary took so damn long that it actually helped at some points, you know.
It's so funny.
And I'm launching into a world now where we've got the Summoning Salt thing, we've got Game Scout just like blowing up, everybody's popping off. I feel like none of these people are my competitors. We're all in this together. I'm so glad that there people are watching and enjoying and sharing. And that's I want to throw my hat in there and say, this is the thing I love. This is my love letter to classic Tetris. It is 5 hours long. It is 5 hours long. But you literally, I wasn't kidding earlier when I said 12 people in the world have seen this. 12 people. So if you buy this Friday morning, you will be like the 13th and 14th and 15th. And that idea that there is this rich trove of stuff with these are like the Legends era people, like it's in there. And I really hope that that's, you know, for the people who do value that, it's almost here. Like it's, you know, 36 hours away. So
yeah. So it must feel like a relief though, to sort of okay, you know, this is done. I went into this with all these hopes. I got a little overwhelmed. I finally got this thing out into the world, and at a pretty good time when there's a lot of interest in Tetris right now. So it's kind of a good time to get it out.
It sure is. And I did not see that coming. I really did not. But you know, if I had, you know, I remember you asked me 2 years ago at CWC, like, hey, when's it come out? I'm like, next year, 2023. And then 2023 comes and goes, and I'm still just grinding away trying to do all this stuff, you know. So the fact that it took this long, it has benefits for me. And yeah, I think it's a very unusual thing to be able to look back at such vibrant things. There was a test screening at one point. It was only episode 1. It was an early cut of it. And one of the things that came up was that I got this comment, which was, it was hard for me to watch some of it because Jonas is so alive.
Yeah.
And I thought, I had gone through years of having that process, sitting at this desk, working on this footage, and honestly crying sometimes because I'm just like, here I am with this guy. And I'm never going to be with this guy anymore, you know? And like we had in 2014, 2015, Ro and I had the house party here. The after party at CWC was at our house. We don't have a big house. It's like a small house. And like, you know, in 2015, I remember Harry and Jonas and Heather basically cleared out the scotch collection that we had. And it was so cool. There's footage of that too. There's like some cell phone footage somewhere. But that was like the kind of thing that we had. And so one of the things that's just to be aware of is like, if you are a personal friend of Jonas and you have that connection, it can be kind of shocking.
Yeah.
And I understand that, and I want to acknowledge that and sort of kind of give a little bit of content warning. There's nothing graphic, there's nothing,
Yeah.
I'm not trying to play this for, big whatever, but like I do want to acknowledge that this is a person we lost, and that matters, and it hurts sometimes. And so I try really hard at the end to make meaning from that.
Yeah. That I had that experience too. I mean, I did know Jonas a little bit. I don't think I certainly nowhere as near as well as you did, of course. But I think it was the two things. It was seeing him, just kind of, hale and hearty, and and then just the quality of the video. When it was those two things came together, it was a little overwhelming, I got to admit. So those two things were, it was. If it had looked worse, if you had made it look worse,
right,
maybe it would have been easier. But it's such a good looking presentation that he really does seem very alive, and it is a little bit jarring to see him like that, but also a delight to see him like that. And this is footage that really almost nobody has seen, and so you're offering the world up something new, so on Jonas, that'll help them appreciate him.
Well, and guys like Harry, like
that's true.
He looks great, and he is like there's a point, you're from the still frames before the thing went on, and there's this, a lot of times Harry throws shapes, like he'll kind of do this while he's talking, and he'll be like, you got to go over here to do this thing, and I just, as a filmmaker, you love it when people are doing that, like they're not just sitting there and being like, oh yeah, I play Tetris, blah, 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 blah. This guy is like active, he's vibrant, and again, we haven't seen that, and Harry is this legend, but like, wouldn't you like to spend some time seeing his face and hearing him talk about what he thinks and how it felt?
I've been trying to make that happen, but he's rejected all my advances.
Yeah. Well, I hear he's coming to the tournament maybe this year, so I hope I see him.
Yeah, that would be good. So hopefully he will be going there. So Chris, you finally birthed this thing after a long pregnancy, and it's out, and you have one more little task to do. You got that episode 6.
And the Blu-rays. There's also going to be a soundtrack album that's going to come out. It's also going to be on streaming too. So paid streaming.
Am I going to get a CD? I want a CD. I'm a physical.
I am trying really hard to convince him to make CDs, but he made a pledge like 5 years ago. I'm never making any more CDs or DVDs or anything.
Yeah.
Because for a while his garage is just full of his own CDs. So we'll see. We'll see. But at least there'll be a digital release, and a lot of people have already paid for that, so that'll be coming out too.
Yeah, I personally want a CD because I'm a CD guy, but not a CD guy, although maybe, but a compact disc physical media person. So all right, so this is out finally. You've got episode 6. You've got a Blu-ray, maybe a CD if we can kind of, I don't know, put some market pressure out there for it. What is next for Chris Higgins?
Boy, interesting question. In the near term, like literally next week, I'm going to Pasadena, and I'm going to work with the camera crew, and probably some folks in chat. I'm going to be pointing cameras in your faces again. I apologize, but that's just what my job is. So I'll be there for that. Longer term, I am entering a period in my life where I'm trying to reassess what it is I'm doing with my time. And so right before COVID hit, I was doing podcasting. And I think that's where I may end up professionally after this, because it's a thing that I have a passion for, and I like it. I think I could find myself, it's an unusually decent match of my like skills and what needs to happen there. So that's probably what I'm looking at, is some kind of podcasting stuff. But I intend to stick around. I intend to be in this community, and I'm working the Jonas Cup in September, and so I think that's going to be honestly like, it's already lit. Like it's already a big deal, and I think a lot of the people in this movie are going to come out to that. So it's going to be this reunion thing, and so I am super jazzed for September PRGE, because to have a DAS tournament in the US as like a mainline, pretty important tournament, that is cool. And I love the CDWC DAS, and I guess it's in Germany, right?
Yeah.
I've watched it for years, and it's like, that's really cool. And I want them both to coexist, but I am so excited to see some of my friends who I haven't seen in so long. So I hope that, maybe some peer pressure could happen when you see these players and you say, you know, hey, do you want to come out of retirement? Because some of these folks are real good.
Yeah.
And they just haven't, they haven't made it out for a while.
Yeah. I'm not saying I'm not excited for for what's happening in about a week and a half, in Pasadena, but I am especially jazzed for the Jonas Cup. I think it's great. I really, a lot of these players some of us who kind of like maybe second wave Tetris community who came into it, after the, Boom Tetris for Jeff and all that, like, which was like where I sort of came in. Those people were, I don't know, those people were my initial introduction, the people like Alex Kerr, who also has, who's covered quite a bit in the documentary, Alex Kerr and Terry and Harry and Jonas and all these players from that era were my first introduction to it and sort of my first like Tetris heroes in a way.
Yeah.
And so I'm real, even some of the ones who are like these Frank Westfall, I love Frank Westfall. I don't know.
Yeah.
Every time I see Frank Westfall, I'm thrilled,
right. Because Frank is rad. He's a really cool guy.
Yeah.
And he's in the trailer. He's like the third or fourth shot in the trailer is like Frank Westfall. And behind him, you can see Josh Tolles is there.
Yeah. Josh Tolles, the Steins who are interviewed several times. So, so I'm really hoping, and especially where this is taking place in Portland, which is sort of became the adopted home of the CTWC. And so it's going to be a vibe if we can get some of these players back into that place playing the main tournament of that weekend, right? Where it's not just some side tournament. It's not just this is the focus. I am especially jazzed for that. So I can't
to invite the new players, because there's like that whole new generation, and I'm not just Sharky, but like there is this whole vibrant modern DAS world, and I want to see them. I want to see them go head to head with I want that whole thing to mix it up. I want to see what happens because that is exciting to me.
Matt Bucco reminded me that I forgot to mention him. So yes, and Matt Bucco as well. All right,
Chris does make a couple of cameos in this thing.
Yes, he does. And wearing the glove, maybe the first like glove wearer right there, along with Yanni. So, although his is more of a mitten, but anyway.
Yeah, that mitten was kind of workout.
You'll really see like this mitten, and if you want to see Yanni's mitten in like 4K, it's like right there, man. It's amazing. Chris, I'm going to go ahead and show the slide with the URL and the code. I don't think you'll be able to be heard during this, but. Folks, if you want to support the artist, if you want the earliest possible access to this material, and if you want access to the part 6, that is an exclusive for those of you who purchase the Best of 5 movie series. You'll get downloads to it. You'll get that bonus material. So go to bestof5movie.com. You'll go to the webpage. You scroll down a little bit. There's a button that says to pre-order, normally $25, but Chris has been very kind to give us a 20% off code. And that is not an affiliate thing where I get some of that. I get nothing. I just want to give Chris a platform to get this movie known so that you all know it's out there, and a little extra incentive for viewers here to go ahead and get it. So go to bestof5movie.com and use the discount code CTM. That'll be up for about a week. So if you're catching this on a recording and it's early enough, there'll still be time. So, all right, Chris, you are back on. Well, I just want to make sure I didn't miss anything. Oh, and also, sub to his YouTube. So, he's going to be releasing his, so you're going to pre-order it, or you're going to order on the day of, or whatever. You're going to get access to it. If it's not something that's within your budget, he understands. It's okay. He's going to release it in July on his YouTube channel, which will hopefully have 1,000 subscribers.
Yeah, that's the big ask that I have. By the way, I just looked at the thing, and 10 people in the time we've been talking have pre-ordered from all over the world. So I'm glad I'm glad to see euros here and other currencies are working. That's awesome. I appreciate that. But yeah, the one thing that doesn't cost you anything is if you can go subscribe to my YouTube channel and like watch the trailer, maybe watch the old weird trailer from 2015 and kind of compare and contrast. I would appreciate that. That would be that's going to be the difference between me being able to make a little bit of money from the ads in July versus not, so if we can get to that, it's like 1,000 subscribers is what I'm looking for. And I'm at like 500 and something. So it's going to be a little bit of a lift, but if we can do it, that is hugely meaningful to me. And again, If you can't swing the $20, I get it. It's okay. Just make a plan. And honestly, if you can be there for the premieres, I think that's going to be fun too, to be watching with a live chat, to be like, oh, wow, you know, like, look what just happened, you know?
Yeah.
So that whole week, each weeknight, we're going to premiere those out. And I think that'll be a really fun week. So
Great.
get on in there.
Chris, I'm pretty excited, and thanks for being with me. Is there anything else you want to say? I mean, I'm going to say follow Chris Higgins Films on YouTube. Chris Higgins Films, just like it sounds. Go to youtube.com/that.
Yeah, all I want to say is, you know, I'm grateful to the players, the people who show up and play, and the people who talk to me as well. Obviously, there's no movie, right? If the players don't let you in on their innermost fears and successes and everything, there's no movie. And without the generosity of all of these people, even the ones who lost, talking openly and honestly about it, there's no movie. And so that I really benefited from that, and I appreciate that. That's super meaningful. I also wanted to give a big shout out to my wife Ro, who has honestly, like, you know, COVID hit 2020, and I had stopped my podcast job that I was doing as a daily show, and I didn't really have any income for the last 4 years. And so my wife has been holding me up as I make this.
Yeah.
And so that it's really important to me. And I appreciate it.
Great. Well, you know, it's always a great relationship to have when we got one practical person and one dreamer. That's like, that's the best combination, honestly.
You got some guy in this weird room making like a Tetris movie, and then somebody who's doing a job.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So amazing, Chris. Thank you so much. It was a real pleasure. And again, I just want to say, everybody, the number one thing you can do, go to youtube.com/@ChrisHiggins. If he doesn't have 1,000 people, when he releases it, there's no ads. I mean, what can he do? So this has got to happen. So go to youtube.com/@ChrisHigginsFilms, hit subscribe. It's free. And that is a way that you can help Chris. If you're able to do a little bit more, go to bestof5movie.com, pre-order or order on the day, 20% off with the code CTM, Charlie Tango Mike, or Classic Tetris Monthly is how you can remember that. All right, Chris, thank you so much.
Thanks, Vandy. Appreciate it.
Right.
I'm going to watch some bracket play this weekend.
Right? All right, awesome. Yes, and I want to, Chris, I will let you go, or you can hang on and I can talk to you after if you want to. But I do want to make sure that everybody, and Chris, I don't know if you'll be on this scene or not, but tomorrow night is Classic Tetris Monthly May 2024 finals. Tomorrow, Thursday, that's tomorrow, May 30th, that's tomorrow. It's at 6 p.m. chicken sandwich time or Central Time. If you want UTC, that's fine. That's 23 UTC. I think those the same thing? Is that the same thing? I think it is. 20 to 18. Yeah, it is. All right. 6 p.m. Central Time, 23 UTC. You're going to see Eyeball, the Canadian, his deepest run ever, go against Blue Scooty, the boy who broke Tetris. You're going to go against, and then you're going to see Alex T, world record holder for score and every other thing you can think of, go up against Sidnev, who is looking for her 10th finals. She wants to get into the finals for the 10th time, has never won. So this is a good opportunity, but has to get through Alex T. So tomorrow night, please watch all of our channels that we're on, Monthly Tetris everywhere. So please go ahead and do that. And with that, I want to thank you all for watching. And again, thanks to Chris for subjecting himself to whatever this was. So everybody, take care, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye-bye. And I'm going to end on YouTube. And Chris, you and me are still live on the other things. And I'm just going to raid